Well, welcome, Family ID. It is great to have you back with us on this podcast and this video resource. You are going to be blessed with our guest today. It is Mark Gordon from Relationship Matters. He is in Canada and doing a lot of what we do, ministering and counseling to families, and he does it north of the border. So I am pleased to bring you Mark Gordon, and I think it will minister to your family and help you to understand that relationship matters. So, Mark, thanks for joining us
Uh,
today. How are you, buddy?
Good. I'm great. Thanks. And it's so good to be connected. I've been following Family ID for a while, and I just so appreciate what you all do there. It's amazing. It's amazing. I can't believe how many parallels we have. It's uh, it's crazy.
It is, and I agree. I mean, I think the more that you and I get to know each other, the more I appreciate what you're doing because, well, frankly, it's what we're doing. So maybe I just appreciate
Yeah.
me. I don't know, but um, let's dive
Amen.
right in. Of course, first topic is always we are family based, and so tell me about your family.
Well, I'm so grateful for my family, and it's actually quite a miracle. But I have married to Sandy. We just had our 39th anniversary, and it's amazing. 39 years. It's not always been easy. We've had incredible testimonies of God's grace in our life. We have three children who are all married to three amazing other children, and so we don't use in-law language in our family. They're all our kids. And so Justin is our oldest, and he's 38, and he's married to Kristen. And then Jaylene is our middle daughter, and she's 35, and she's married to Zach. And then our youngest is Jenna. She's married to Nick, and she's 29. And so it's been a wonderful time. We have a great family. So I'm really super proud of all of them.
I'm impressed that you can remember all of their ages and the ages of their
Yeah,
spouses. Like that is keeping track of that. It's always a moving target. It's always a moving target. So good job.
it is. Well, I'm just going to give my wife credit on that one, and she might even correct me after she sees this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
It sounds right to me, Mark. It sounds right to me.
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
So tell me, okay, digging into those three children that are yours, married to three others, the
Yeah.
overarching, or for you and Sandy, and maybe your kids as they were in your home, what's the Gordon family all about? What are you guys about?
Yeah. Well, before I move on to that, I forgot the two grandkids, which were the most important in the family. my mind, my mind went blank. Anyway, yeah. So we have a 4-year-old Violet and a 2-year-old Jude, and they are the joy of our life. And so I'm going to get in trouble if any of those kids watch this one, especially their mom, Jeline. So anyway, well, our family is. We've had quite a journey in our family. I came out of a pastor's home. I was raised in the church, but I was rebelled early and hard. And so I walked away, and so for many years I had addiction, and I met my wife in my addiction. And Sandy and I had a really very difficult first marriage. She ended up marrying her father in a sense. She didn't know who her real father was. She had three different stepfathers who had abused her, and so she, fell in love with me because of the bad things I was,
Mm.
not because I was the good. She quite often jokes now. She said I married a bad boy and I ended up with a good one, but 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 that coming into the healing journey, quite a miraculous story, and I won't take the time to tell the whole thing, but I'll say this: we were actually separated, living 1,000 kilometers, or sorry, 800 miles.
Okay, good.
I
Yeah,
got to
that makes
use,
sense now. Yeah, okay.
yeah, about 800 miles or 700 miles apart, and we both came to the Lord the same morning through different sources.
Oh,
And when
wow.
we worked out the time difference, it was literally within a half hour of each other, we gave our hearts to Jesus. And of course, that changed the trajectory of our lives. We didn't know what it meant at the time completely, but as it unfolded, we started to discover that there was a call in our lives to help other people who have come through the same road. And so we started very early helping young people. I didn't want them to go through what I went through. And so we were in youth ministry for many, many years, and then eventually became a senior pastor. And I just actually stepped out of that role in the last, since October, to give full time attention to what I'm doing now with the Relationship Matters, and because I have such a passion to see families be healthy. So our journey, what our family is about, is Jesus and serving God and serving our community well with integrity. And so that's kind of how that came about. Now I'm leaving lots of gaps in between, of course, but that's kind of what our family is about. We want to actually impact our community. We want to be a people who love God and are used by God to make change and transformation in people's lives, and specifically around the family. My heart has been broken. I think it's the years of youth ministry. I saw these kids, I used to have people tell me, "Hey, you're the guy that works with troubled kids," and I always said, "No, I'm the guy that works with kids with troubled parents." and and so that kind of I think started back then, because I realized, we were seeing young people come to Christ, seeing lives transform, but then they'd go back home, and we used to kind of in our behind the doors would say, then we have to send them back to the hell zone. And it's so hard on these kids. I remember one young man, he actually literally buried his Bible in the backyard in a plastic bag because his parents wouldn't let him read it. So he'd bury it out there and go and dig it up and read it so that he could have it. And so these were the kind of families we were working with, was broken, hurting families. And it just broke my heart. And so it wasn't a surprise to me that this would eventually evolve into a full-time effort towards helping families. So that's what we're all about.
That's a wonderful story from start to finish of you and Sandy not being near the Lord, and then Him calling you both close to Him, and watching that
Yeah,
maybe coming from, if I'm hearing that, broken families, or at least strained families of origin,
yeah, yeah,
and then that being the ministry of your heart and digging into it. It's we say a lot at Family ID about how coaches can take children or kids from the hardest homes, but because you give them hope and encouragement and a great big vision,
yeah,
that you can completely change the child,
yeah,
even if you can't control or influence the home state that
yeah,
they go back to. And it sounds like a lot of what you were doing, right? Like you were ministering to that
yeah,
kid, giving them hope in the Lord and encouragement, tools and
yeah.
resources, but you still had to send them back into an environment that was too challenging.
Yeah, and so I guess as it went on, I'd have parents come to me and say, like, "What have you done to our child? Like, are you brainwashing them? Because like they're completely changed. They're not like, we need to know what you're teaching them." I had one dad come to me and he says, "I want you to sit down with me once a week and tell me what you're teaching my kid, because you're making me look bad because he comes home talking about you and how you told him this or that." And he says, "I don't know how to answer him. He's got these faith questions that I don't know how to answer. And secondly, I see a change in him that I want for me." And
Mhm.
that's a good example of how I think it evolved for me is, what if we looked at the whole family unit instead of just the youth? What if we could change the culture of the family? If we could create a healthy relational culture within that family, we would be able to actually see them flourish. And I and that's kind of where this evolved to, because I felt like it was, you know, here's the thing. When I was in my addiction, I was an adult, I was still that little guy that was just wanting to be loved. And, so a lot of times the brokenness we see in families, Sandy and I had tremendous grace and acceptance for them, of them, because we realized what it was, because we
Mhm.
had gone through our own version of it, right? So I think it positioned us well to have credibility, authenticity, because we were able to actually identify with some of that brokenness, and we're able to journey with people. And so I think that's kind of where it came from. And listen, we didn't go in with this to with a grand plan at the time. Now we understand vision and mission and all those things, but we didn't have a grand plan back then. But now, in hindsight, we can see, God. I could see all the intersections God just used us and we learned things in each one of those experiences. And now I feel like God's blessed us with the opportunity to use all that knowledge and that wisdom that He's given us, and all that He's brought us through, and put it into more of a design. And that's what I love about Family ID and what we do in the vision and mission work. Because if a family is on purpose together, they're going to stay together. And so I really believe that.
I heard I heard somebody say once, and I would love to credit them, but I can't remember who said it, is um, that life can only be understood looking backwards, right? That's where you see God's
Yes,
hand
right,
moving all those pieces and understanding why your experiences gave you that, I don't know, credibility, relationship equity
right.
with families in crisis or situations. But life can only be understood looking backwards, but it
Yeah,
has to be lived, unfortunately, going forward. And so
yeah,
you don't get to fully understand everything that happens
no.
to you in the moment.
But what I have learned is that, everything, whether it's bad or good, any experience you have is actually your teacher. So we don't have to, we stop resisting bad experiences or problems in a sense, because I felt there were opportunities to learn. So if we did have some conflict, if we did have some struggle in our family, we looked at it as an opportunity to grow and go deeper with each other. And I know for a fact, when you walk through conflict with somebody and get out the other end, you are closer to them. Your connection has been solidified and it's been strengthened. And so the problem is, in today's society, people run from conflict, or they misunderstand it, and they don't realize what the purpose of it is. It's to actually help you learn about yourself and to learn about others.
Sure. That comes with, let me commend you on that. That comes with a mature mentality and approach that you're right, not everybody has. In the midst
Right.
of conflict, they do run away, and then their last interaction is based in conflict, not based in resolution
That's right.
and strengthening of relationships. The
Right.
maturity
And
piece of that, this is unverified, completely inexperienced perception. But believe from my experiences in life and my relationships with others is that sometimes when there is a wounding, like a severe wounding, traumatic
yeah,
experience, something extreme, it sometimes limits or stunts the maturity and the growth of that individual, right? Like you're talking about,
absolutely.
you were an adult in addiction, but inside you were still maybe a young boy, a teenager or a young adult who is still maturity wise, craving the things that a young adult
Yeah.
craves instead of what an adult craves.
That's correct. Yeah, it is, and a lot of times emotionally, you're stunted at that season of trauma. It's hard to grow past that. The other thing that happens is you start to actually formulate a belief system. You construct a belief system that is based on the trauma and your experience with trauma, rather than on what God's plan is for you
Right.
and what He says about you. You see, I've always often said, everybody is valuable. I teach in several recovery houses regularly, and I do a relationship matters workshop and help them to have healthy relationships. But I also do one on shame, and I always start off by telling them that they're incredibly valuable, that they're created with a built-in value that they don't understand. And the problem is, a lot of times we try and get our value or significance outside of ourselves, rather than understanding that it's actually God who created us and He gives us our value. And when we start to have that understanding that He is the one that puts the value on us, we're His masterpiece, the word says. And when we realize that, hey, we're His masterpiece, then I got to redefine what I believe about myself. And so I've often said, everything flows out of relationship. And so we have three areas of relationship that we need to give attention to: relationship with God, because He's the one that put the value on us; relationship with ourselves, because we need to know how to relate to ourselves; we need to know why we do the things we do. I always say awareness brings choice. So we need to understand why we think the way we think. And then the last one is then we can have healthy relationships with others. So if we have a healthy relationship with God and a healthy relationship with ourselves as a result of that first relationship, then we are in a better position to have relationship with others, and it'll flow much better, and it'll be much better. And I think that's the problem today. There's so much trauma. There's so much information through social media and the media that is confusing people's identity. That's confusing who they are. They're told what their value is based on the wrong things. And I think that's created a relational void or gap for them. If you can't relate to yourself or understand why you do the things you do, how are you ever going to see someone else in the right light? And so that's a lot of the work I'm doing, is trying to help people see that. And it's amazing to watch the light bulbs come on when they start to realize that they're already valuable. I tell them, I'm not here to fix you. You're not broken to be fixed. You actually already have value. All my job is to reveal it. Yeah, I want you to know, I want you to see that value that you already have in you. Once they see it, they remove the walls themselves. They start taking those things down. They start to make better decisions because they make it from the place that they're a masterpiece that God's created. And so that's the premise of where I come from.
And so I can see that, because I think it's the second relationship, the relationship with self, that
Yeah.
oftentimes we overlook, we skim past,
Yes.
or we move directly from relationship with God to
Right.
relationship with others. But
Yeah.
that internal script that
Yeah.
that continually plays in your mind, or where you resort back to in times of
Right.
stress or challenge, is what you start to
Yeah.
play about yourself. And if you can flip that, then
Right.
you're moving from a place of strength and confident masterpiece, as you call it, which is beautiful. And I love that you tied on just social media and advertising. I sit back, and sometimes, as my family and I are watching TV, we
Mm.
pause, not the actual TV, but maybe we'll put it on mute,
Yeah.
and we'll unpack the commercials that are being played.
Right.
Like,
That's
hey,
great.
why do you think, we're watching this show, why do you think we have these types of commercials? Who do you think they're targeting? So what do you think
Right.
their primary audience is, and what's the message that they are playing? So,
Yeah.
real men drive trucks, or you're cool if you drink this drink, or you
Right.
are a winner if you do this. And it creates this,
Yeah.
from what you're talking about, this self-image of, I'm not great or valuable because of who I am and who God made me to
Right.
be. I am
Right.
valuable because of what I consume, what I do, where I spend my money, the activities that I do. Like, and it's a
Yeah.
complete and total mind shift that it is,
Yeah.
as Proverbs says, chasing after the wind, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
you'll never catch it. You'll never catch it.
Well, I believe God's design is that the parents would be the most informative to the children and to the people. But what's happened in today's age is that they have access to information, and so they have so many other people telling them what they should think and what they should believe. And I think that takes it that skews it. It confuses them, and so it's so important that parents take on that active role. So coming back to the relationship with self, how can I do that for my kids if I don't realize that I have value? How am I going to ever pass value on to my kids? And that's why it's such an important work for parents to go through that process of making sure that they have a healthy relationship with themselves. Because if they do, then they're in a better position then to teach and model to their kids that healthy relationship and what a healthy relationship looks like. It's a confidence. I like to say when you know your value that God's placed on you, you'll grow in Godfidence, not not self-confidence, in Godfidence. Like, I know that He has created me with a purpose. And that's why by the way, it's so important. All the things that Family ID does and the things I do in terms of helping families do vision statements and mission statements and values, all those things, it's so important to do for yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine a family if both the mom and dad come in, like when they meet, if they come together in their marriage and they both know who they are in Christ and they have that Godfidence, boy, they're in a much better position to help those kids have confidence. And I just think we need to live with intention and not by accident. And so parents, I just really encourage parents that might watch this, get intentional with building relationship with your kids. The one thing I can say, I made lots of mistakes as a parent because I was actually still healing when I was a parent coming out of addiction. And so my kids, I'm very grateful. They say they only remember the good dad; they don't remember the bad one. But so I'm grateful for that. But I coming out of that healing journey, we actually were very transparent and shared our healing journey with our kids, so that they would actually, so we could model that you can do this, that we are going to do this together, that we work as a family unit. I wasn't willing to put them on the altar of sacrifice for the ministry like my dad did for my siblings and I, right? That was an era when if your family wasn't in order, you weren't worthy of the call. And so it was more harsh. It was more about behavior. It was
Right.
do's and don'ts.
Right.
Whereas I say the kingdom of God is about yeses and nos. Yes to what God has for you and planned for you, and no to what would keep you from that plan. And so we raised our kids about through yeses and nos, not through do's and don'ts. And we raised them to say we need to put relationship above the issues. So if we do have a conflict, we have to hold the relationship above that conflict and then deal with the conflict from a relational standpoint. And that is really important, I think, for families to understand that sometimes we can fight, we can have tension, and we don't understand the damage it's doing around us, with the kids watching and hearing and whatnot. And so Sandy and I really decided early that we were going to be transparent in our journey. And if I could tell you a story that just blew us away. So um, I don't know. My youngest was still at home, but she was in just, I think, in senior year of high school. The other two were gone and married and already had their lives. Now we're fortunate; all our kids live in this area, so it's kind of cool. Anyway, for whatever reason, Sandy and I just had some unspoken tension in our marriage. It was just a season. There was a lot of pressure at leading the church, and there was some other pressure, and I think it was just getting to us, and maybe there was an offense that we didn't talk about, one of those conflicts that we didn't actually resolve. We let it kind of carry on. And my youngest daughter at the time called her siblings and said, "You guys got to help me." And he says, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Mom and Dad are like, it's just tense. I don't even want to be at home. Can I come and stay with you for the weekend?" And whatever. And they said, "You can, but no, we're coming over right now." It was 11 o'clock at night, and we get a doorbell's ringing. Sandy and I are literally in bed, just going to go to sleep. And the doorbell rings. I go down, answer it, and here's my son and my daughter, the older ones, and they said, "We're having a family meeting."
Right now or like in the
Right
morning?
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I said, "I'm just going to bed," and they said, "No, we're having it now. We need to have this meeting." And so we go on, and they basically called us on the mat. They said, "You guys don't have to tell us what it's about, but we grew up in a loving home where we actually put a relationship above anything else. And right now, you and Mom aren't doing that, and Jenna is suffering because of it. So you guys need to get your act together." And just figure it out. Just talk about it, and that's what we're here to tell you. Jenna deserves to have the same home as we grew up in. And I thought, wow. Well, first and foremost, it was like whoop, right to the heart.
Oh, of course it was.
Second,
Yeah. Yeah.
secondly, like the pride started coming up. Like they get it. And we started, and so when they left, Sandy and I go in the room and we look at each other and we literally started laughing. We just like laughed because we thought our kids just held us accountable. And I just felt like that is a great story to just illustrate a shift that happened in us. It was like, wow, like they had the courage and the ability to come and hold us accountable for the environment that we had, the culture that we were creating in our home, when that wasn't, it was contrary to the culture that we had taught them that we have in our home. And they recognized it and they knew what to do with it. They even used language we used with them when they were young, and it just hit home. And I think that illustrates kind of, I think, for families, like we do this together. Quite often when I do the family and the vision and mission statement and the values, I get the kids involved and I get them to actually make art and posters and put it up on the dining room wall and tell them, you guys need to look at that when you're having a meal together and just remind each other. And so it's very powerful. It's very powerful when you see your kids living out the vision and mission,
It,
and especially if it's holding you accountable.
it is powerful, and that again speaks to yours and Sandy's diligence over the years of not only teaching them, but
Yeah,
slowly moving through those parental roles of
yeah,
cop, right, to
yeah,
coach, to
yeah,
consultant, and handing over responsibility to them and
yeah,
telling them, hey, you are well trained, and now that you are well trained, you have this responsibility and
yeah,
authority within our lives. And a lot of
yeah,
what you're talking about is what we call at Family ID, the interdependent family, the family
yes,
that gets its needs met inside the family, so they don't turn
that's
outside
right.
the family to get their needs met. And
Yeah,
it's great. And I think you hold the relationship above the circumstance because
that's it.
relationship matters. Relationship matters. So that
Yes,
that ties into tell me
yeah,
what relationship matters actually is. What do you do? What's the you wrote a book
yeah,
about it. What's the
yeah,
book about? How do you go through your process? What's
yeah,
unique about it? Dive into that for me.
yeah. Sure. So the book came out of the workshop actually. So it was actually I did it backwards. I started teaching some workshops about it, and didn't have the name Relationship Matters, but I was teaching these principles, if you will, in our church, and I wanted to strengthen the relationships in the people of the church, and then people outside the church started hearing about it. So recovery houses and just community people in the community here, and so I started teaching it in the community, and every time I taught it, somebody would say at the end, like in during Q&A, they'd say, "You need to write this in a book. Like you need to put this in a book." And so I resisted that because I thought, well, who's going to read a book I write? And all those limiting beliefs we have to fight through. But it came to the place where I finally felt like it was actually somebody said to me, it was really poignant. They said, "Mark, if God gave you a nugget, don't you have the responsibility to share it?" It's like, oh boy, that just
Fine,
took all of
fine.
my
I'll write
limiting.
the book. Fine, I'll write the
Fine, I'll
book.
write the book. So I did write the book, and then COVID hit, and so I literally released it during COVID. But here's the premise of the book is this: if you want a house that's going to stand the test of time, you want to build a house that's going to be strong in the storms, that's going to stand in the storms. You need three things in there. You need a healthy foundation, you need a strong framework, and you need a sturdy roof. If you have those three things, everything else is room division and decoration. But those are you really need those things to make a house strong. Well, in the same way, if you want to make your home, your family, your relationships strong, you need a healthy foundation. You need a strong framework. That's how we're going to relate to each other. And you need a sturdy roof. That's that section of the book. I talk about what is true authority. What does a covering mean? So many people have been misused authority in their life that they just reject all authority and they leave their family exposed to the elements, whatever circumstance might come along. And so what I do is I teach them what true authority is and what the roles in the family are and how authority works through those roles. And then I give an example, like every shingle in the roof is somebody or a group that you invite to speak into your life. So they might be engaged with family ID. That's putting a shingle in your roof to help protect the family under that roof. And then working backwards, the framework are the things like vision statement, mission statement. What are our shared values? What is our love languages? Gary Chapman's work around love languages. How do we want to what are our values that we want to do? What's those? I call them taproot principles that will guide our family. Now, taproot principles comes from a tree example. Trees either have surface roots and they entwine to hold them up in a storm, or they have tap roots that go super deep and they'll stay standing in the storm. And I say taproot principles are those principles nobody can take away from you. They're values that nobody can steal from you. So, for example, uh, honor. Nobody can take honor away from me.
Right.
That's a choice that's written in my heart. I get to be a person of honor. That's my choice. If we want to be an honorable family, that's our choice. Nobody can take. That's a taproot. A surface root relies on other people for agreement. So, for example, in a family, if eating around the dinner table is a value of the family, then there isn't fighting to come and eat together. But if one person in the family or two people in the family don't want to come and eat together, then you kind of need the whole agreement thing. And that value is where you have agreement. And so that's what the book is. So we take them through a process of establishing a vision and mission statement and a set of values that they can live by that will guide them. And I kind of use an example of this in the book. Uh, a vision is one riverbank, a mission's the other riverbank, and the values and the purpose of the family is the water that keeps you flowing in the same direction. And so, if without riverbanks, that water has energy. It has synergy. When you have riverbanks, it creates energy. But if you don't have riverbanks and the water floods, what does it do? Well, we all have experienced floods. It destroys everything.
Right.
It creates a destruction path rather than a energy. It's actually creating destruction. And so these riverbanks keep the family going in the same direction. Otherwise, it's like being put in a dinghy and put out to ocean, and then you just kind of eventually drift apart. I can't tell you how many couples I've had in my office say, well, we just drifted apart. We don't love each other anymore. Well, yeah, because you didn't have riverbanks in place and you weren't moving in the same direction. And so you built your own lives separate in the same house.
Yep.
So that's the middle section. And in the first section, the healthy foundation comes from the idea that there are some principles or some pillars, what I call 5 pillars, that create a healthy foundation. They keep the strength in your foundation. The first one is trust. Obviously, relationships can't survive without good trust equity. And so that's the first one. The second pillar is communication. Healthy communication is so vital to have in the foundation of your relationship. Otherwise, there's all kinds of misunderstandings and whatnot. The third one is authenticity. We really need to be true to who we were designed to be. That's the getting to know yourself part. And if I'm authentic, I'm going to recognize authentic. You see,
Right.
the beauty of these 5 pillars is if I know that I want trust is my foundational pillar, and somebody's not being trustworthy, then that's a red flag for me. I don't want to go any further with that relationship until I know that there's trust built. And so, of course, in the book I take people through how do you build trust equity, and some of the principles of that. So authenticity. Then the next one is honesty. Uh, you know, Dishonesty or deception is destroyed more relationships than you can imagine. And there's reasons people are dishonest within them. Maybe they're fearful of getting caught, or they don't want to tell somebody something because they don't want them doing it. So maybe dad's on the way home and mom doesn't like him stopping at the bar for some drinks with the guys. She wants him to come right home. So he lies about it. Yeah, no, I had to work late. Just little white lies, but little white lies build up to a big blockade in the family. And so that's a pillar that needs to be. Honesty has to be in there. And then the last one is honor. I think our society's lost the art of honor. We
Mm-hmm.
need to we need to have honor at the foundation of our relationships. I want to be an honorable person, and I want to treat people with honor. And so I treat my family with honor. That's one of our, it's right in our vision, our mission statement is honor and integrity. We want to make sure that we're people of honor. And so that's kind of where that's the book. That's
That's
the
it.
foundation. So all the workshops I teach, I have a strength-based parenting workshop. I do the relationship matters. I break it up. Sometimes it's just the 5 pillars. Sometimes it's more. And then I also try to deal with some of the subjects that hurt relationships, like anger management, like shame. Oh man, Derek, shame is pervasive in our society today. It's one of the major things that hold people back is shame. It's a weapon of the enemy that is brutal. And so if we can have people realize that God has removed all the shame, the cross removed the shame, now we're more clear to actually make decisions based on who we are instead of those walls that we build or those limiting beliefs about ourselves. And so that's the book. It's called Relationship Matters.
So remind me of those 5 pillars in the foundation. There's uh,
Trust,
trust.
trust, healthy communication or just communication,
Okay.
authenticity, honesty, and honor. Those are the
Honesty
five
and honor.
pillars.
You spoke about honesty, and there's a pastor that said, he had 3 rules in his house. they disciplined for three things, right? Disobedience, disrespect, and dishonesty. And
Yeah.
dishonesty was the worst because dishonesty, or those little white lies, break relationship. They break
Yeah.
relationship. And
Yeah.
all of the others, honor and communication and trust, they hinge on that
Yeah.
honesty or
Yeah, I teach that in the class that each pillar actually are interactive. Well,
Yep,
in a building collapse, what do? They take out certain pillars and then the whole building comes down.
that's
And
right.
so these pillars are interactive. So when you have honesty, guess what? The trust pillar is being built
That's right.
because there's honesty. When you honor somebody, the trust, the honor, is being built. When you communicate well, the trust pillar is being
Right.
built, and on it goes. So each one is interactive. And I don't know why I picked those particular five. There's lots of other ones that, lots of other pillars you could put in there that build a healthy relationship. But, somebody asked me once, why isn't integrity? Why don't you put a sixth one in there, integrity? And I said, I believe, if you're authentic and you know who you are in Christ, integrity is not a problem. If you're honest, integrity is not a problem. You see, here's my description of integrity. It's it's who I say I am and who I actually am. And if those two things are as close together and tied together, that's integrity. But if and it's also who what I say I'll do and what I actually do.
Right.
If those are together, I have integrity. But if I make decisions that create integrity gap, eventually that integrity gap grows bigger and bigger. But if I'm trustworthy, if I communicate well, and I'm honest in my communication, if I'm authentic in who I am, and I actually am honorable, guess what? I have integrity because that
Right.
is who I am. That is who I am. And so I didn't put integrity in there because it's an outflow, it's an outcome of these other things. If you have all of these five pillars, integrity is not going to be a problem.
Right, right. So tell me this. What are some of the greatest things that you've seen come out of your workshops or interactions with the books, or really the work that you and Sandy have been doing in families for years, but perhaps maybe towards the latter years where you focused almost entirely on family relationships?
Well, I can tell you just in the last 2 months, I've seen three marriages saved where they were literally separated and we saw them come back together. The other piece is when I see the children. I'll illustrate with a story, if I may.
Please.
Um, I got called by an elementary school next door to the church one time, and they said this little guy was in crisis and he was causing all kinds of disruption. He was 7 or 8 years old at the time, so he's in grade three, maybe grade four. It was causing so much trouble. They said we're at our wits' end, and if he doesn't straighten out, we're going to have to kick him out. Like imagine being that young and having to be kicked out, that disruptive. And they said, we know you work with families. Would you be willing to help out? So I said, sure. So I met with the mom and dad, and I started realizing very quickly that the problem was in the home, right?
Right, right,
And so this little guy, what we discovered is that this little guy would freak out to try and divert dad's attention from being mean to mom and actually quite violent at times towards mom. He would act out to get dad to look at him instead of mom to protect her. And so he would, for example, if there was tension rising, he'd go into his room and trash it. He would break things. He would put holes in walls. He would go nuts so that they would have to stop their fight and go and deal with him. Well, what happened over time is that he actually started just acting that way all the time. And so at school, if there was any kind of tension or he was not sure about how to handle something, he would go into this freakout mode. So, and there was some mental health issues there as a result of all that, right? So anyway, I started working with the family, and I took them through the process of doing a vision statement, a mission statement, and a set of values. And he had an older brother and a younger sister, and we did it with the whole family. And then I had the kids make up the art, and so they put it up on the wall and in their dining room. Well, a few months later, they noticed that his behavior had changed significantly. It was much better. And the parents were doing better because we had worked with them to help their relationship. And then, but everybody defaults, right? We relapse sometimes, and so they were fighting in the kitchen. This little guy walks in the kitchen, doesn't say a word, walks in the kitchen, grabs both mom and dad by the hands, walks them into the dining room, points at the poster, and walked away without saying a word. so, so the parents, of course, that broke the tension, and then they realized, wow, he's telling us that we're not living up to this
That's
vision and
right.
this mission right now.
That's
And
right.
so it was a beautiful story. And that little boy actually really started doing well, and he came around, and the family has done much better. I haven't seen him in the last few years. They moved away to Victoria, but but it was that's a great illustration. And I tell you, I can't imagine spending my life any other way than doing God's work that way and serving our community and serving families and to see that fruit. Now, I've had lots of failures too, let me tell you, because I can't control what people do.
You
All I
can't.
can do is give them, all I can do is encourage them and coach them and whatnot. And, if they don't listen, they don't listen. But boy, is there ever an honor? Isn't it just such an honor and a blessing to be able to be invited into people's lives to that depth, to have the trust equity with those people and know that it's God's favor on me, it's God's wisdom through me. It's not me.
Right.
Listen, because of my addiction, I have a grade 8 education. It's one of the reasons I didn't think I could ever write a book. I didn't think I could accomplish anything like this, but it's the call of God. It just keeps pushing me forward. It keeps drawing me into His compassion for families. Just keeps drawing me into these situations where I get to invest in people. Last week I was teaching this class that I was telling you about in a recovery house. It's also an agency that gets women out of the sex trade and sex slavery. And these women are broken, they're hurting, and they've been mistreated. And I go in there, and the Heavenly Father's heart manifests for me. This is an agency I can't preach the gospel in, but I'm a living epistle that's being read. And they
Right.
see the love of God, and they open their hearts up to me. One girl says, "I feel like you're the father I never had." And
Oh,
it's just like and it's like, wow, like God, you've entrusted this with me. And so I find it such an honor to be able to do this work, but it's also so needed in today's society. Uh, listen, Derek, we are in crisis. If people don't start to wake up and realize this, like every family ID connected person needs to get behind family ID and volunteer, help, do something. It doesn't take, you don't have to have, like, I had no training. This is all stuff God dropped in my heart. But it wasn't all at once. It was like over years of just being obedient to the little things. Just find an intersection. Maybe you got a family in your neighborhood that is struggling. Just be Jesus with skin on to these
right.
people, and you never know what's going to come. Gift them. Some one of the family ID training. I took it. It's awesome. It's amazing stuff, and it will really help families have hope. And so it's so easy to help. And I just think more believers, more Christians that love Jesus need to start stepping up and realizing our families are in crisis in this generation, even within the church. You could be sitting next on Sunday to a family that is in absolute crisis because maybe they've lost their way. They go to church out of religious duty, but they have not applied the principles of Christ in their families. Help them, help them, come alongside them, love them where they're at. Don't judge them. You know, that kid that's acting out in Sunday school that you're kind of like annoyed with because your kid maybe got hit by them or whatever. Let the compassion of Jesus rise up in you.
That's a
Let
good
him
word.
come. Let him come and just love that kid. He just needs some love. He just needs somebody to tell him that he's okay. And so, yeah, sorry, I got a little preachy there. I don't
No,
didn't
that's
mean to
good.
do
No, we'll take it. That's a good word, Mark. That's a good word. Um,
that. I get
you know,
passionate about this stuff.
I am too. We are too, and that's why I think we have a great relationship and partnership, and that's why God's focus and passion has moved through us into families
Yes.
and to help them have relationship healing and spiritual healing, and
Yeah.
to have direction, as you said, moving in the same
Yeah.
direction at relatively the same pace. That way they can
Yeah.
walk together.
Yeah.
Your a couple stories here, and then I'll ask how people can connect with you. But
Yeah.
the last story I have is, it piggybacks on yours. I heard once of a boy who was a successful attorney as an adult, a great man of God and loved the Lord. At 13, he checked himself. He, with the help of his uncle, checked himself into DHS, or checked himself into, state care, to
Yeah.
move from his
Yeah.
current home into foster care. Checked himself in, which gives
Wow.
you a glimpse of how bad that home life situation would have been. And he got placed
Mm.
with a healthy family outside of a major metropolitan area. And that foster family was the first time that he saw a parent go to a steady job. It was the first time he had ever sat at a table to have a meal together as a family. And as a man, as
Wow.
a grown man, he admits and he says, "Look, just seeing it done helped me know that it was possible. And as soon as I
Wow.
knew it was possible, then I had a goal that I could strive for,
Yeah.
that I could work towards." And so
Yeah.
I think you gave some great applicable examples of what families can do to help other people see
Yeah.
that it's possible. Go love
Exactly.
on a neighbor. Go love on the people next to you in church. Go find somebody who maybe is an outlier and give them grace and hope,
Yeah.
and shine the light. Right, like Matthew five
Yeah.
sixteen is, "Let your light
Yeah.
shine before others, so that they may see not your good deeds, not your life, but they may see your good deeds and glorify
Yeah.
God's name through it." Right,
Exactly.
that is being the light of Christ on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah. So good. Such a great story. Yeah.
Um,
That's exactly it, isn't it? It's just we like to complicate it in the church, but it's really not that complicated. Just if invite a family over for dinner one night and let them see what it looks like to have the family around the table.
right,
Let them experience it. They might then go home and say, "Hey, we need to do that. That was fun."
right, right.
Yeah, just it's so simple if we just all do our part and we all take on our responsibility, and then maybe through that you find that God's got more for you. We didn't, Sandy and I didn't know we were going to have a 32-year career in ministry. We had no idea that that was going to happen. But as we obeyed the Lord, I always say, as we said yes to God, he revealed more and more. As long as we kept saying yes to him and no to what would keep us from his path, we were doing great, and we still are. We're still doing that today. Even though we're in the upper years now, we feel like we're in a better position than ever to be able to just give back and to keep saying yes to God. And this was a big step for me. I was the lead pastor at this church for 17 years, and did lots of great stuff. And it wasn't that I couldn't do what I'm doing, being the pastor there, but with responsibilities of running an organization and all that, I felt like I could actually spend more time investing in families if I wasn't in that role anymore. And we'd raised up a team, and so it was easy from a functional point of view, but it was hard from a heart point of view to
Sure,
transition. But it was
sure.
good. Yeah,
Yeses and nos, right? Yeses and nos.
yeses and
Yeses and
nos,
nos.
yeses
I
and
like
nos.
it. So, if somebody wanted to say yes to Mark Gordon in Relationship Matters, how would they say yes to you? How would they connect with you or Relationship Matters? What's the best way?
Yeah, well, the best way is markgordon.ca, CA because it's Canadian. So markgordon.ca, and that you'll find my website, and there you'll see my social links, and you can just click on that if you want to follow me. I have a live cast, I have a podcast. I do a lot of stuff around relationships. My heart is also for the community, so a lot of it isn't overtly. It's safe if you have somebody that's a non-Christian friend, but you want to introduce them to God in through this kind of method. It's safe, and it's sensitive, community friendly, if you will. A lot of my material, but it's all biblical principles. So it's I call it a revealing ministry. We reveal the heart of the Father rather than a preaching ministry, which is preaching the Word of God. And I still preach the Word of God sometimes too, of course. But yeah, so you can just go to markgordon.ca. There's also a link on there that you can send me an email like a contact form. And if you want to reach out in any way, the book is on there. You can go and order the book on Kindle or on Amazon, whatever. There's a bunch of platforms you can order it off of. And yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, I appreciate your time today and just telling us a bit of your story and what God's doing in and through you and Sandy and your ministry there, and helping us, just providing us, downloading us some wisdom about, hey, how to make sure that relationships stay above circumstances, how to build a healthy house with our family through a foundation and framework and the roof. Thank you for your time, for your heart, for your ministry, and most importantly, your service to God.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. And I'm so honored, and I have such a high regard for Family ID. So this is a real privilege. And thank you for all the work you're doing too.
Well, thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you. So, well, Family ID, you've heard it here. Mark Gordon, go check him out, markgordon.ca, and understand that relationship matters. And if relationship is your key, he's got some great resources to help you out. I encourage you to go check out his podcast, his videos, the book. It's great work. Mark, thank you. Family ID, thank you guys. We'll chat with you next time.